Here's what's next on the Nice Guys on Business.
The other big difference is that we don't overstaff deals because we don't have a lot of mouths to feed. We are very top heavy. And people who look at our firm and say, wow, you guys don't have a lot of associates. And the reason is because we're working lawyers. We don't need a lot of associates. You need a lot of associates if you're just going to bring in business and then pawn it off on associates or junior partners to work on, worker bees, right? At our firm, we are the worker bees. The senior partners who would otherwise be doing that at large law firms are actually going to work on your deal or your litigation in a way that wouldn't be the case if you were to hire one of our competitors.
Because the house always wins. Play long enough, you never change the stakes. The house takes you, unless when that perfect hand comes along, you bet and you bet big. Then you take the house. Oh, and the Nice Guys on Business. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by Turnkey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
All right, Nice Guy community. Today, we're diving into the world of law with Armen Martin, the driving force behind Foundation Law Group. Armen has been practicing law for over 25 years, and for over a decade, Foundation Law has been redefining legal services. And I really want to correct myself there for just a second. Not just redefining, I would say it's more like a paradigm shift in legal. He offers expert, practical, and affordable solutions without the red tape of traditional firms. If you know what I mean, if you've ever been into that attorney's office that has all that overhead and all of the stuff, the pomp and circumstances that goes along with legal. With a powerhouse team of attorneys, Armen and this team provide direct, senior-level expertise to help businesses navigate their toughest challenges. Now, if you're looking for top-tier legal counsel with flexibility and efficiency, you won't want to miss this conversation. I'm excited to chat. Armen, welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, I'm happy to have you here. I want to go back to the very beginning for just a moment. Were you the fourth grader that was on the playground, right by the sliding board and not participating, but making sure people were following the rules? Or were you the guy that had no idea that you were going to go into law until later in life?
Zero idea I was going to go into law.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it then. How define yourself? How did you get to the point where and you can back up a teeny little bit because you're actually overdriving that microphone.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about the beginning stages of you getting into law and how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to do after graduating from college. I thought I might pursue a career in politics, and I did that for a year. It wasn't really for me. So I didn't know what I was going to do next. And my college mentor said, hey, why don't you go to law school? And my response was, I don't want to be a lawyer. And he goes, well, you could do a lot of different things if you go to law school. It's not great advice. And I definitely do not give that advice to people these days. I tell them quite the opposite. Only go to law school if you're sure you want to be a lawyer. But I did get into a good law school and I didn't like it. So I ended up being a startup and M&A attorney because I tried to figure out what's the farthest thing from being a lawyer while being a lawyer. And that's doing startup deals and M&A deals, and was fortunate enough to get a job with a great firm in Silicon Valley at a law school, which really set my career on the path that it's been on.
So at some point during that path in your journey, you saw an opportunity that many law firms don't take advantage of, or maybe you are the creator of this environment. At what point did you say, you know what, there's a better way of not just practicing law, but bringing a viable service to a group of people, especially in the startup and entrepreneurial space where a lot of the people are broke in the beginning stages? How did you know that there was some white space to fill?
Well, it really came down to, I had been at large law firms in Los Angeles for over 10 years. And my experience was that there really wasn't a player at that time in the LA legal scene that was focused on startups and tech M&A. And that made me start thinking that, look, if the law firm itself is not really providing me with that platform, why am I paying for a lot of the things that you pay for when you're at a law firm, like fancy office space, very top-notch, secretarial support that I hardly ever used, training young lawyers who were expensive and don't really make money for law firms the first couple of years. All of those things didn't really fit into how I wanted to practice. So I thought, what if I can eliminate those things and really cut down on the overhead, which also cuts down on my risk, and go off on my own and do my own thing. And that's how the firm was formed when I partnered with a former client of mine, actually, who had begun practicing law again, to form this firm, Foundation Law Group.
Why rock the boat? I mean, it was like career was going along well. M&A attorneys can make a pretty significant income, and there are opportunities within the traditional space to make your fortune and to make your name known. Why rock that boat and create something new?
Well, because I looked at what my practice looked like at big firms, and I was about 50 or 60% busy with my own work. And I wasn't really getting the institutional work from the firm to keep me fully occupied. So I looked around and I said, well, what's the firm really providing for me that I can't provide for myself? And why am I paying 50 to 70% in form of overhead on what is collected, where I could do it on my own and pay about 10% in overhead, which is what Foundation Law Group charges its attorneys. So really, that was the calculation that made me make the jump and start this firm.
All right, let's talk about the model, because I'm really curious how this model works. As I was doing some research and listening to some other interviews that you had done and some things that you have written, and then looking at the caliber of the attorneys that are with you, I was blown away. And understanding that the overhead is 50% plus in the traditional model, and then in your case 10%, sometimes even less than that, which helps you to it's reflected in your fees, I'm sure. So talk about that and how that really came about, and how it's working for you now.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been a revelation in the sense that I don't have to worry about legal fees, particularly with my startup clients, because I can charge them fees that are fair for them, but also make sense for me, and I do well personally, as do the other lawyers sort of on our platform. So if we were at the firms that we came from, we'd probably be charging out at, I don't know, $1,200 to $1,800 an hour. That's a lot of money. And if the client is paying out of his or her own pocket, which is the case for startup companies, and is definitely the case for a lot of the middle market companies and family-owned businesses that we represent on the M&A side, that really means something to them. So our hourly fees are at least half of what we would be if we were at the big firms. The other big difference is that we don't overstaff deals because we don't have a lot of mouths to feed. We are very top heavy, and people who look at our firm and say, wow, you guys don't have a lot of associates. And the reason is because we're working lawyers. We don't need a lot of associates. You need a lot of associates if you're just going to bring in business and then pawn it off on associates or junior partners to work on, worker bees, right? At our firm, we are the worker bees. The senior partners who would otherwise be doing that at large law firms are actually going to work on your deal or your litigation in a way that wouldn't be the case if you were to hire one of our competitors.
So I was listening again to some other interviews that you have done, and I was trying to think about the comparison between you and, let's say, an entrepreneurial based organization or a startup. You have fixed fees, you have subscription model, you have hourly. Is there a best way to bill your clients? And I love the knowing of being an entrepreneur and knowing, hey, if I'm coming to you because I want you to expand my business into Las Vegas, or I want to start a new business, I love the idea of having a fixed fee rather than the meter is always on, which is always a challenge for us guys that are bootstrapping everything.
Absolutely. So on the startup side, we definitely do fixed fee arrangements to get companies off the ground. Because a lot of what we do is based on forms and whatnot. And some would say cookie cutter. But what I would caution people is that there are platforms out there that try to replicate what a startup lawyer would do, from incorporation all the way through a basic financing.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, my experience has been that those startup platforms end up leading clients astray and are not necessarily economically efficient, because then you'll come to me and I'll have to redo a lot of the work because it wasn't done right the first time. It's like me trying to go on to a platform to build an app. All right, that's great, but I don't know how to build apps, right? Engineers know how to build apps. And unless you follow the instructions to the absolute T, which very few entrepreneurs do,
right?
Because they're big picture people, they're going to make mistakes that are going to end up costing them a lot. So one example is we have something called our startup package, which is basically I'll start your corporation, I'll file all the incorporation paperwork, take care of all the agreements with the founders, the stock issuances, whatnot, put together a stock plan for you to be able to issue options to service providers in the future, and do a basic non-negotiated friends and family round of financing. And we do all of that for a flat fee of $10,000. Plus whatever the hard costs are, about $1,000 or so,
right,
depending on a few different factors. If you were to go to a big firm and do that, you're talking about triple the price.
Wow.
There are some platforms that will do that for about, I don't know, $2,500, $3,000. Whenever I get one of those, I always end up having to redo a big part of the work. And I see founders who haven't filed 83B elections on time, founders who just instinctively use safe mechanisms where maybe a price deal makes a lot more sense. There's a lot of art in what I do that people think is just science and cookie cutter, and that's not necessarily the case.
Go ahead, Armen.
Yeah. One thing I will tell you, one thing I won't do flat fee pricing on is mergers and acquisitions deals. That's a prescription to putting yourself out of business and doing a really bad job for your client, because that's so variable and so dependent on what the other side looks like, what kind of terms you're negotiating, et cetera. That is almost impossible to do flat fee pricing on. That having been said, having done 150 M&A transactions over the course of my career, I have a pretty good idea what things will cost.
Right.
So I will tell my clients very honestly, here's how much I think it'll cost. And sometimes they'll lose deals because people will lowball it and then say, a bunch of stuff came up that I didn't anticipate. That's okay. If I lose a deal because of that, I'm perfectly fine. I have more than enough work, right? But there are a lot of lawyers who will mislead their clients and tell them it's going to cost a lot less than what it actually will.
I just keep thinking of all of the transactions that I've been through, whether it's legal, accounting, any of the things that are the professional services that I don't know anything about, and you get in for a specific fee in your brain, and you've kind of talked to the attorney or the associate that's working with you, and then at some point they're like, hey, we did not anticipate that this was going to be a part of the services, or we didn't anticipate the amount of time that we're going to put into it, and it's going to cost you extra money. At that point, you're halfway into the game. You can't turn around and start over with another attorney. That wouldn't make sense.
Look, they have you. And when I was a young lawyer, I worked with a partner who that was his business plan. He's like, at that point, what are they going to do? They're going to fire me and hire somebody else? No, they're just going to pay double what I told them it was going to cost.
Which further propagates the whole reputation that many attorneys have, because they're always, in many cases, not in your case obviously, but in many cases, their finger is always on the scale and the meter is always running, and you don't really have control over it. And at 500 to 1,000 or even more an hour, you run out of money at some point along the runway. And as a startup, especially somebody that's bootstrapping their business, it's, you're paying everything out of pocket. It's not like I have a big investment fund to go to pull money out of. Where do you think that the law firms lost touch with the average guy? Because there are plenty of big companies that are out there, but why is it that law firms have lost touch with just the normal person that's around?
Because there's a huge pressure at law firms due in big part to the large overhead to increase prices, because there are only so many hours in a day, right? It's not like other businesses where you can get infinitely more efficient, though I do think that AI will bring some efficiency to hourly work. But there are only so many hours in a day, so you got to continually raise your hourly rates. That's the whole name of the game. At most firms, it's 5 to 10% a year. Okay, I haven't raised my hourly rates twice in 12 years, because I don't need to. I can make a very healthy living charging the hourly rates I do because my overhead is so minimal comparatively. And sometimes people will say, "Well, isn't it true that you get what you pay for?" I totally agree with that. You do get what you pay for. And if you're paying the big firm thing, you get their fancy offices in Century City or downtown. You get the amazing secretary who books lunches. You get the associates. With us, you're not going to get those things. We don't have those things. We don't need those things. And when we practice, a lot of times lawyers that I'm talking to about coming over will be a little hesitant and go, "Well, I'm like going from the major leagues to the minor leagues." And I'm like, it's not like that at all. Indeed. Most of the deals that I do are against those fancy, expensive law firms.
Yeah.
And guess what? I'm friends with those folks. They send me work a lot of times when they're too expensive for that. So I totally appreciate the space that they occupy, and as well as the space that I occupy. And one of the things I tell my partners is, for example, don't go out there and try to get Fortune 100 business, because the person who's hiring you gets fired if something goes wrong and they go, "Why did you hire, a 17-person law firm called Foundation Law Group when you could have hired IBM or the IBM of law firms?"
Right.
That's the old saying. So those aren't our clients. Our clients are the people who are actually paying the fees and feeling it.
Talk to our community about the physical makeup of your firm. You don't have the traditional overhead, so you don't have the traditional expenses. So talk about how your firm is put together.
Yeah. So, we have partners who go out and rent their own office space. A number of the litigators on our platform need that in particular for, depositions and whatnot, because they have a lot of in-office meetings. And then most of our transactional partners either work from home or, like me, work in a little Regis suite in an office that's smaller than the office that I had as a first-year lawyer out of law school, because I don't care. My clients are not coming to visit me there, right? I'm just going there to get away from the dogs and the kids and focus on doing what I need to do, and leaving at a reasonable time every night. So it's a very different kind of way than your traditional firm, though. In talking to my friends at traditional firms these days, they're saying that maybe 20% of their office is occupied on a day-to-day basis, since COVID in particular, where lawyers really figured out, "Oh, you know what? I don't need to go to the office to get work done." Ironically, part of me sort of feels bad about that, because when I was a junior lawyer, going into the office was very important for me. And I think that it is very important for junior lawyers at big firms today. And when I talk to those folks, when, they come to me and talk about their careers, I tell them, go into the office. Don't sit there and work from home every day. That's not good for you. The way you're going to learn is to go into the office, sit in on partner calls, listen to how partners talk to their clients, and from that, really understand how to manage clients.
Well, it took probably a couple of decades, maybe slightly less than that, for you to get your, I call it the ego metric, get your head out of the way, because oftentimes there is no advantage to having the large amount of overhead, the big office, the catered lunches and all of that. And at some point you smartened up and said, "Hey, why don't I try to go for some of this white space that's here? And there's a whole market that I probably could appeal to, and do it at a lower price and not sacrifice the end result income as a result of it." When did the ego or maybe it's really, why is there so much ego in these traditional law firms as it relates to, having to have all of those things when you can get by with a lot less and do a lot more for your clients? Because really, isn't that's what it's about, is servicing your clients?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think most lawyers tend to be risk averse. And when you're at a big firm with all the resources of a big firm, you know that if you're a corporate lawyer like me, you can pick up the phone and talk to an expert in tax, employment benefits,
Yeah.
environmental, whatever it may be, right? And when you go off on your own, like I did, you realize, holy moly, I'm going to have to create my own ecosystem of these folks.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, that's available even for a solo. There are so many folks who are solo practitioners with very impressive resumes who are experts in the various other areas of the law that you're going to need to run a practice like mine, which is a generalist practice where my clients are going to need employment help. They're going to need tax help. They're going to need help in various areas that I'm not an expert, right? Our firm tries to replicate that by allowing the partners feel like they're running their own practice, and in a lot of ways they are,
Right.
in terms of the economics, but also have the luxury of having some of those experts around you, so you can run a full business law practice without being at a firm with 1,500 lawyers.
So who would be an ideal client for you, whether you specifically as an attorney or you as the managing partner, or I guess the CEO of this larger organization foundation?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of me as an attorney, somebody who's thinking about selling their business. I do M&A, and I've done M&A from all angles, but these days, 80% of the M&A I do is smaller to mid-sized companies, all the way up to from, I would say $5 million to $250 million. Those kinds of deals really require senior attention,
Mm-hmm.
but also, depending on the size of the deal, can't really afford a $750,000 to $1 million bill at the end of the day, right?
No.
So from that perspective, that's the kind of client that would be really a good fit for us, and I think they would find us to be as helpful as we would find them. In terms of attorneys, it's folks who are kind of tired of doing the big firm thing, but
Mm-hmm.
still want to practice at a very high level. In particular, those who think that they can't do it without being at a big firm, like I did for 15 years of my career. That's who we're looking to bring on our platform.
So a couple different things that Armen had just shared with you, Nice Guy community. Keep in mind that not only is he a practicing attorney with a law firm and the legal expertise at Foundation, but if you are someone in our audience and you're an attorney and you potentially are, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this. I want to do this from home. I want to do this remotely. I want to do this in a different area. Armen, it sounds like you're also on the hunt for maybe some good attorneys.
100%. Good business law attorneys. You know where to find me, reach out. The rule that we have is we don't make money on the partners that join us because of the way that we're set up economically. It's, like I said, very eat what you kill.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, the most important thing is people that are really excellent lawyers and really excellent people. Because if I'm not going to make money on you, you can't be a jerk. You can't be a bad lawyer. I don't have the time to deal with it. Right. You really have to be an excellent lawyer and an excellent person. And, even though it's ironic, we're virtual, so we don't see each other on a day-to-day basis, but we, for example, have an annual retreat. We usually do it with spouses. And part of the reason why we do that is to really foster a family sort of feeling amongst the firm. And I think that really comes through in the fact that in all the years that we've had the firm, which is 12 years now, we've never had a partner leave voluntarily. And frankly, we haven't had, other than one case, had to let somebody go because they weren't a fit. So it's a firm that's grown very organically. We've never hired a recruiter. Everybody we've hired is somebody that we've known or gotten to know. So it's really a different kind of way than what most lawyers are used to.
And talk about right place, right time. I mean, now with technology being as prevalent and as widespread as it is, and artificial intelligence, and obviously the internet and social media, the Zoom meetings like this recording platform has been instrumental since COVID, as well as there's many other recording platforms as well. Technology has got to be to your advantage. I'd love just to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was very skeptical about AI in particular. I ran some experiments on ChatGPT, for example, and did not get very good outcomes. Since then, I've discovered a legal tool called Spellbook, which is just for lawyers and is amazing. And it's really going to help increase my efficiency in writing contracts. It's not for every lawyer. It's mostly, I would think, I'm sure they feel differently about this. The company does, but it's mostly for transactional lawyers. But its ability to, for example, as I'm drafting a document, and I could just query it and say, hey, I really need a strong non-disclosure clause right here. And it gives me 5 different examples. And as a lawyer, you just click through those and you figure out the one that makes sense and works for your document. You hit insert and boom, it's there. Rather than me having to think about, let's see, in the last 25 years, what deal did I do a non-disclosure clause in that I really liked, right? So I think tools like this are really going to help lawyers. They need to be deployed by lawyers. I think one of the big mistakes that people make is, I can use this myself, pay a couple $100 a month and not need a lawyer. And I think that's a real mistake. In fact, it won't really help you and you'll probably get into trouble doing it. You need a legal eye to understand why you need something here, why you may not need something here. Because you've seen, how taking this road as opposed to the other road ends up, right? AI can't really tell you that.
That's kind of like we own a podcast production company, and that's where we make our living with our shows and our clients. And it's kind of like somebody investing in editing software, but having no idea how to use it. It makes sense to have a professional that's behind you. Armen, take off your legal hat for just a second. Talk to my audience as an entrepreneur to other entrepreneurs that are out listening to your interview right here. And share with our community how maybe how you feel like you've really injected yourself into this wonderful world of legal, hitting the white space, understanding that most attorneys they're not good business people. They're great attorneys. Do you think that you could have done this same thing if you didn't really have the entrepreneur mindset just as an attorney? Or do you think that the duality of you being an entrepreneur and an attorney kind of worked really well in this particular case?
Look, I'd love to say that I foresaw where I would be 12 years ago when I started the firm, and that would be an absolute lie. What I knew was I'm a pretty good attorney and I can do this without a lot of the accoutrement, so to speak, that I was getting at a big platform. So I looked at the math and I did the math, and that made sense to me. Taking the jump is difficult, particularly for, like I said, risk-averse attorneys, right? You go from a regular paycheck to all of a sudden I'm running out to the mailbox every day to see if there's a check in there. That's how it all started.
Yep.
But the other thing I would say for people who are thinking about taking the plunge, the entrepreneurial plunge, is sometimes you don't even know where your work is going to come from. One thing I absolutely did not anticipate was how much of my practice would be referrals from big, expensive law firms.
Wow.
And it was only after I started that I started getting calls from these folks saying, hey, look, we represent this company. They're doing a $5 million acquisition. We can't really do that without charging them $700,000. Could you do this for us? And them knowing that I'm going to do that deal, I'm going to do it for a fair price. The client's going to be happy. And guess what? At the end of the deal, I'm going to give the client back, right? You don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Totally.
So, sometimes situations like that arise that you don't even anticipate as an entrepreneur. And as a startup lawyer, I will tell you, and most startup founders will tell you, it takes 2 or 3 different iterations of a business plan until you hit on the one that's successful, if at all. So, if you're ready to hustle, you're ready to go out and work hard, and people think like, I did this because I don't want to work hard anymore. That then
Right.
then absolutely take the plunge, go for it, try something different.
I love the fact that what did you say? You said something about when you started 12 years ago, you had no idea what would it would have evolved to. And I think about early on when we first started this podcast, 10 years and 1 month ago, actually, and we were interviewing people. We were talking about being business consultants to teach people how to grow their business. We had an entertainment agency that was doing, I don't know, somewhere between $1 million and $5 million a year, depending on the year, depending on the services that we provided. And I was going to teach other people how to start and run their business and then teach them all about customer service. And it took 2 years for us to realize we're not listening to the people in our audience. We ended up getting one person in our audience, Lou, and Lou started a podcast, and that was the beginning of 350 plus podcasts ago.
Wow.
And if you listen to what your market wants, your services will evolve. And it sounds like you've done just that. I bet you probably did not expect the larger law firms to be referral sources of business
Not at all.
to you.
Not at all.
Which is great. What a great opportunity. All right. So one final time before we head out of here today, share with our listening audience how they can get in touch with you to get more information about what you do, how you do it, and then again, who is the ideal client to be approaching you and talk about your services.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or just our website, foundationlaw.com. If you click over to the attorneys page, you'll see the bios of the very impressive folks that I'm lucky to call my partners and colleagues. If you're a small business owner who's thinking about selling their business, give me a call. If I'm not the right fit, I'll probably know who is. And that's a big part of this practice, being a good person and, looking after people, even if they don't pay you anything, because people remember you and then will refer you to that big deal, even if their deal was not that big. So, I never charge people an initial introductory call fee or anything like that. I'll get on the phone with you, talk to you for 15 minutes, half an hour, give you my thoughts. And then, you can figure out what's best for you going forward.
One of the nice things, again, just part of my experience with Armen, Nice Guy Community. So you kind of know the type of guy that he is. He was referred to me by, I think a publicist or PR agency. Was it Valerie that referred us to each other? And what was so interesting about that first call was, you just came across as just a nice guy and, a nice guy that has a good business sense and a great model that he has created and works really well for him. And I really feel like, as I've had a couple of conversations with you now, I really feel like you do break the mold as it relates to most attorneys. So many attorneys, and I have a couple of clients that are attorneys too, or many clients that are attorneys in the podcasting space. But I find that the people that tend to excel at business are the ones that are good people. And that's definitely a mold that you fit into very well. And I'm sure that it's been a valuable contributor to your success as well.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I will say that I think a lot of times people have a conception of lawyers from what they see on TV. Your average transactional lawyer, for example, is not that aggressive. There definitely are a few jerks out there, and we do our best to steer clear of them. But, I can't tell you how many deals I've done with lawyers on the other side where after the deal is done, we negotiate hard and we try to get the best outcome for the client. But after the deal is done, we go break bread together. And I've made a friend now, as well as a potential business contact.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Armen, thank you so much for sharing your message and your inspiration. I know my community will get a lot out of this episode, and I hope we get some business for you. And thanks for being here on the show.
Thank you very much, Doug. I really appreciate it.
Hey, nice guy community, never underestimate the power of nice or the power of a well-adjusted, good-seasoned, high-personality attorney on the other side of the interview chair as well. Special thanks to Armen Martin. All of his information, including access to his website and all of his socials, will be right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the nice guys on business, and in accordance with my court-mandated community service, I'm Steve O'Brien. Only 27 more voiceovers to go, and then maybe they'll let me leave the state and take this ankle bracelet off.